Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 80 of the Sports Consiglieres podcast. 80, I guess we'll go with Phil McConkey. Every episode, we have a Giants-based show, so everything, we always pick an episode and a number of it. But our next guest, I saw his movie on Instagram, and I said I had to reach out to it. So immediately reached out to the writer and director of Luv Ya Bum. Everybody knows members of Houston Oilers back in the 75-80. And it's our pleasure to introduce, unfortunately, Jerry's on assignment. He's in the middle of girls soccer season. Andrew Miller. Andrew, thank you for coming on. Great concept, great story. So if you could just tell a little bit about yourself, some of the projects you did, and then more importantly, this project you have, Luv Ya Bum. So
yeah, sure. Tell you about myself. You stumped me with the first question already, Jimmy. No,
okay. All right. You could keep it light. You can keep it light. So whatever.
I'm a cinematographer on most days, so I work in the film industry in largely documentaries. We do all kinds of different things, but documentary is where I'm happy, and been doing that since 2010 or so, and made a bunch of docs on a bunch of different topics. I'm thinking this may be the only one that's on sports, actually.
Okay.
And I should say right out of the gate, I didn't really know anything about Bum Phillips when this project began.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And that's true of most of the projects that I get involved with. In fact, it's one of my favorite aspects of it is you get to really do a deep dive and really learn a ton about it. And I can tell you for sure that the Houston Oilers are now my favorite football team.
Yeah. Well, they still have a following. I mean, we did some episodes on Montreal Expos.
Yeah.
They just came out with their documentary on Netflix. But I think the Houston Oilers, I think it was a shock that they moved from Houston to Tennessee. And I know their owner had their reasons, but just tell us a little bit about the story and then and how you kind of like went from concept to delivering it.
Sure. Yeah. So the story, it's really a movie about Bum Phillips, and most of it happens between 75 and 80, his time with the Oilers. He goes to the Steelers afterwards. We follow that. We learn a lot about his kind of being an understudy under pretty big name collegiate coaches, all throughout the country, but certainly Texas. And so it's a movie about Bum Phillips, but so much of it happens in the Luv Ya Blue era, which anybody in Houston would remember as that really the kind of the period in time when Earl Campbell shows up and they start to give the Pittsburgh Steelers, those Pittsburgh Steelers, Terry Bradshaw Steelers, everything they could handle. And that's what the movie's about.
Yeah. So, I mean, just talk about Bum Phillips. I guess he was born in Orange, Texas, 23. He served in World War II, was a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up playing football, I guess at Stephen F. Austin and Lamar, and then was a high school coach. And then he went on to the coaching ranks, and then I guess he was under the tutelage of Bear Bryant, who Bear Bryant is, you can't think of college football without Bear Bryant. And just take us through how he became from Texas A&M. I guess he became an assistant at San Diego, and then how did Bud Adams kind of find him? Because I guess it was a shock that he was a coach, and also a pretty flamboyant character. I put on Instagram a while back, like, you think there'll ever be a coach that wears a cowboy hat? And sure enough, the Dallas Cowboys documentary, you saw Deion Sanders with a cowboy hat, but everybody looks at, you show a picture of Bum Phillips, but just talk a little bit about from his early upbringing, where he got the name Bum and to how he got to the Oilers. So
yeah, sure. I think the name Bum is it just came from one of his siblings, I think, if I remember right, and it was just couldn't pronounce his name or something like that. His name is Ole Andrew Phillips, Bum being the nickname, and that just sort of came about organically as a kid. And it wasn't Bud Adams that found him; it was Sid Gilman. So the Oilers were in the basement, and they had a couple of back-to-back one-win seasons. This is after the leagues merged, and they had a tremendous amount of success in the AFL. So they had won a couple of championships, played for another, and then they merged, and they were not doing well, and the fan base was not doing well. And so Sid Gilman had been a storied coach. He had a lot of winning. I want to say he came from the Chargers. He might have even come out of retirement, but he knew Bum. And so he brought Bum on as a defensive coordinator. And so long before this, you mentioned Bum had a good high school coaching career and collegiate coaching career. He was recognized even as a high school coach as a defensive genius, and he brought a lot of innovations to the game that are in the game today. They're still used in defensive schemes, and we document all that in the movie. Well, I hope. But yeah, so he showed up in 75, could have been 74, with Sid Gill when Sid came, and he was there for a short time. Sid got the team back to an even record, and then from there, Bum took over.
So he became the head coach and GM of the Oilers in 75. And then I guess one of the first people he drafted was another Texan, was Earl Campbell. So you talk about Bum Phillips, and I think after Bum Phillips, you think about Earl Campbell, who made the Hall of Fame and also a Heisman Trophy winner down in, I guess, the Rose of Texas, the Tyler Rose, I believe they call him.
Yeah, the Tyler Rose, that's right.
Yeah. So just so how was his impact, Earl Campbell, on the team and with the Oilers too?
It was huge. This year's Frida, by the way. Frida was
Frida. Oh, okay, all right. You want to on camera? That's all right. That's all right. I got a couple of dogs, so I know that they require all your attention. So
she gets it and deserves it. But anyway, so Earl came on the scene in 78, as you said, right out of Texas. And in the previous 3 years, Bum had really built the franchise up, and he made some other good pickups. They had, Billy White Shoes Johnson comes to mind, and Renfro, who comes up importantly later, joined the team. And so they built a roster and started to see a lot of success. But still, they were in the AFC Central with Pittsburgh, so they're just always lagged behind the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had 10 Hall of Famers on their squad and won 4 Super Bowls that decade.
Yeah.
And then here comes Earl Campbell, and it's suddenly like, now wait a minute, these guys have a shot, and they started to trade wins both on the road or at home for the next several seasons. And so Earl, I mean, he made a tremendous difference, as you might have expected. He was, he's obviously a Hall of Famer later, along with 3 of their defensive players. So they had built up something, but Earl was a game changer. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully we document this well in the movie too. Obviously nobody knows if it'll translate from college to the NFL. And there was skepticism about Earl, particularly after some preseason games went so for him. And then first scrimmage out of the regular season, he runs something like 70 yards for a touchdown. And And
then I guess he won the Russian title that year. He beat out Tony Dorsett, and that was the difference that year. That one run. So
for several years, he won Russian title. Yeah, he was a tremendous addition, and he took him to a couple of AFC championships in a row.
Yeah. And so Bum was always he always had these sayings too, like he would say, "Love your players," and they'll play and they'll play for you. And also he said, it goes, the Cowboys might be America's team, but the Oilers are Texas's team. So he always had like these little quips that kind of pictured him. It was almost like he was typecasted to be an NFL coach.
True.
The way he looked at it. So
some of the things he said, people are still trying to figure out what he meant.
But
when he leaves the Saints, he gives a speech, and it's when he leaves the NFL as well. And I think the last thing he says to the reporters is, let's just load the wagon and don't worry about the mule.
Yeah.
You can imagine the reporters in the room were like, what exactly does that mean? But that's the type of stuff that would come out of his mouth, and why people loved him too.
So, but with 78, like I said, they broke through. I guess they were an AFL team. They never made it to the playoffs. I think the first AFL team that didn't make that playoffs, and then I guess the NFL changed it to a 16-game season, so I got to play more games. And then I guess the Pittsburgh Steelers were undefeated, and they were going into Houston, and then they end up. I guess it was on Monday Night Football, so all eyes were on it. Was that the Luv Ya Bum game that kind of came out? Like, just talk a little bit about Luv Ya Bum, and also how'd you get the name Luv Ya Bum? So
yeah, right. So Luv Ya Bum actually kicked off when Miami came to town. So Miami was coached by Don Shula. They were a powerhouse team, and the Oilers for the first time in a long time had been winning, but they needed to win this game in order to really make a run for the playoffs. And the fans were there. The fans, that's half of this movie, is how Houston responded, because Luv Ya Blue was the fans. And the story about where Luv Ya Blue comes from as a phrase is not terribly sexy. It's some marketing executive. I wish I had his name. He's due the credit, but he came up with the phrase and printed these blue placard cards. They gave them away to all the people entering the stadium and the Astrodome, and along with blue and white pom-poms. And so that night, was very electric. And Earl ran for 3 touchdowns, who knows how many yards, and it was on the back of his touchdown that put the game away. And it was tie game. It was a great game, but the fans lost it, and it's like COVID or something. It's just everybody. Stadium got it. It spilled out. Everybody in the city got it, and it went nuts, and it stayed nuts for 3 years. And one of the cool things about a job like this is you get to just nerd out and pore over all of the material, to include like all the newspaper articles, the local TV broadcasts from the period. And so we got to look at it. And Houston in the 70s all by itself was just a scene. It was an ascendant city. People, there's a real vibe there, and it's the 70s. And but once Luv Ya Blue took off, it was a whole nother thing. And part of it, I was really glad to have the job and to be able to do this project. And another part of me was just super sad I missed it, because I hadn't yet.
Well, I was a little bit younger on there, but like you talk about Houston at the time, economically, it was the oil business, it was thriving, and everything else. 80s was not so much, but getting back to the team, I guess 78 they end up losing to Pittsburgh 34-7 pretty handily, and then they go back to the Astrodome, and then they didn't know what to expect. But the outlook. Just talk a little bit about the outpouring of support. When they got back.
Well, it actually happened twice. And so 78 was the first year they made the playoffs. They traveled to Pittsburgh for the AFC Championship, and it's just the worst possible weather, right? And there's some great shots of people, truly, not exaggerating, sliding through the wet, icy field, 15, 20 yards, really, truly. And so they got their tails kicked, came back to Houston, and Houston showed up in a really big way. They packed the Astrodome. I believe it was the local radio station that just had kind of arranged for all the people to show up, and they did. The whole city showed up, and there was something like that first year, 50,000 people, to celebrate a team that had just lost, right? Yeah. So very moving. And
it was a sloppy game, like I said. I think there was 14 turnovers. I think the Oilers had like 9 of those turnovers, so it was a very sloppy game.
Yeah.
Oh, and then. Were you able to interview any of the players from that time? Like, I know Dan Pastorini was a quarterback, obviously Earl Campbell, but any other players for the documentary?
Dan is in the movie. Earl's in the movie. Elvin Bethay in the movie. Let's see, we've got Renfro has a lot to say. Robert Zeal is in there. So yeah, all the main cast of characters who's still around, and then we also spoke with Terry Bradshaw and Mean Joe Green.
Okay, yeah. And then just getting back to the 79 season, a little different story, but there was some controversy. So I've heard a couple of things. This is before instant replay. You alluded to earlier about the Renfro. It was a catch, but no catch. So just talk a little bit about what happened in the 79 season.
Yeah. So after 78, they hit the ground running. They've just got a fire in them. The city is behind them, and sort of a similar story. They ended up beating Pittsburgh late in the season. So, optimism was high. I think this was at home at the Astrodome. And then they go into the playoffs, but they still ended up 1 game behind Pittsburgh. So they entered as a wild card again, get through. I can't remember which teams. I want to say Denver and the Chargers. And here we are again, AFC Championship at Pittsburgh. But this time they really give it to them. And so it's a close game. And I want to say it's the end of the third quarter and just about to enter the fourth quarter. They're down a touchdown. Pastorini throws it to the corner in the end zone. Renfro 2 feet in, snatches the ball and picks it up. And the next few minutes are pretty agonizing because you see that the line judge, he just missed it. He just didn't see it. He doesn't know what to do, so he waves it out. And then they begin to have a conference. The crowd's going insane. And, meanwhile, everybody across America is looking at the replay, everybody except for the referees, because they didn't have instant replay at that time. And it was pretty clear that it was a catch and it was good. But it's ultimately called a no catch, a very famous no catch these days. And then they go on, and as Pastorini put it, you just don't play catch up against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And then was there also another controversy with Billy White Shoes Johnson? Was another catch with that, or with the
nothing that had the same pain and sting as the Renfro catch? That's how it's referred to, as the Renfro catch.
So they ended up losing to Pittsburgh 27-13, and then going to the next year, they finished 11-5, make the playoffs, but then Bud Adams decides to fire Bum Phillips. Did you talk a little bit about that in the documentary? Like, why the change was made? Because I think they traded Dan Pastorini to the Oakland Raiders, and then they got Ken Stabler.
That's right.
Pastorini ended up getting hurt.
He did.
Yeah, which is surprising. You think now, like, I'm a Giant fan, to make the playoffs 11-5, we would be singing Bum Phillips' praises to get to the playoffs. So
that was everyone's impression. Everybody was mystified by it. And so the movie treats the firing. I don't know that it answers your questions, because having made the movie, I don't know what happened. I think 2 people knew what happened, and I think they're both dead. Bum was a classy guy. It's funny to say his name Bum and then talk about him being a classy guy, but he didn't keep his laundry in the streets. He I think he protested a little bit about the way he was treated, but not so much that it happened. And he moved on. He got another job, and that's what that was. Now, Houston didn't quite move on after that. They were very upset. They were very upset in the immediate aftermath of it. There's so many things that happened there. So we did skip over after the second AFC loss. That was the big dome coming event, as it's known. The dome coming in the Houston, again, 2 years in a row. What you might think would be a frustrated fan base, they create a scene that moved those players and those coaches to tears. And it's really pretty wild. They come back, we pick them up, we see them in the airport, and they can't even get through the airport. There's tens of thousands of people on the highway to the dome, inside the dome. And that's when Bum gives the big speech. We're going to kick the son of a bitch in. But so there was huge, stakes going into that third year, the 1980 season. And, it was a very interesting, controversial choice to trade Pastorini for Stabler. Stabler, very good quarterback, towards the end of his career. As it happens, the Oakland Raiders would go on. They're the ones that knocked the Oilers out of the playoffs, and they're also the ones that went on to win the Super Bowl. So that's 3 years in a row the Oilers lose the eventual Super Bowl winner.
Yeah, and Jim Plunkett ended up replacing Pastorini, breaking his legs, and the rest is history. So, but do you delve into what happened to him in New Orleans, or you just more focus on what happened to him in the Oilers? Houston.
We go through it. We go through it fairly quickly in the film. He was there for a little while, 5-6 years, I think.
Yeah.
Mostly the point that, he didn't have a tremendous amount of success there. And I think what we cover there is it kind of does 2 things for the point of the movie. For one, it shows Bum being a total class act again, the way he ultimately resigns, and he resigns mid-season because he's not living up to his own standard. And it's a level of accountability that you don't often see, like he had every incentive to stick around and keep cashing those checks. But instead, the other thing that it does in the film is he hands the baton to his son, Wade Phillips, who is a coach I'm sure we're all familiar with. And he had actually been a defensive coach through the entire Luv Ya Bum era. So he coached with his dad in Houston, and then he took over in New Orleans, and that began Wade's head coaching career. And
Yeah, and I guess he ended up winning the Super Bowl in Denver.
did.
So,
And there's a lot of we talked to some of the players, particularly because he was the defensive coordinator, Wade was in Denver, and so we talked to some of his playmakers like Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware and Aqib Talib, and
yeah.
It's funny to see the quotes from those guys. That was Super Bowl 50, so I can't do math, but 30, 40 years, a long time later.
Yeah.
But the quotes that they say about Wade, and this is why it's in the movie, it's the same things that the players said about Bum. And so that does a couple things for us. For one thing, it shows that this winning strategy was in fact that. It's because Bum took a lot of criticism throughout his entire career for being a nice person, for being a coach who liked his players and was friends with his players. He took a lot of flack for that. And in fact, that's the narrative in the newspapers about why Bud Adams fired him. Now, I don't think that's what it is. That seems sort of intuitively obvious to be like the line, But nevertheless, that was the Phillips way of coaching, and it's an effective way of coaching. And to see the thesis is basically that if you create a family, they'll play harder for each other than they will as a team than they would their teammates. And that's exactly what you see in Denver. And these guys are just, oh man, they were up against Newton and undefeated Carolina Panthers, and they just mauled him. It was an amazing game.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm glad that you covered that because I think he's a very Bum Phillips. I think he's an underrated coach, and Wade Phillips I thought was an underrated coach. Just goes to show you how hard it is to be successful in football. But just talk about the Oilers itself. They had the run and shoot in the '90s, and that didn't Warren Moon, and that really didn't pan out too well, especially with the Frank Reich game with Buffalo. But what did you get into '97 with Bud Adams?
No, we stayed away from Bud. It's a movie about Bum, and maybe there's another movie about Warren Moon. I mean, if you combine his stats with the CFL, which is where he spent most of his career, he's untouchable. Tom who?
Exactly.
So Warren Moon is special, but it's just it's just a different story.
And this project overall, like, who helped you along the way? Like, I just talked a little bit about the Oilers fan base now. Does the Titans, do they pay homage to the Oilers at all on any games? Just talk a little bit about like who helped you in the process, and then the Titans and their connection with the Oilers fan base.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you sort of have to ask a diehard Houston fan. I've seen it both ways. I've seen people who say, the Titans are not the Oilers, and they're Texans fans, right? And then you see people who are. It's occasionally Tennessee and Houston will play, and occasionally Tennessee will break out the old uniforms. You also see those uniforms being worn, or at least the color scheme, by University of Houston. And so, there's a lot of love still for the Oilers, but I don't know that necessarily translates to the Titans. But the Titans certainly, they've got their ring of honor there, and they were happy to provide us with what they could provide us, and including their owner gave us an interview, who's Bud Adams' daughter.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of excitement still for those years and what they accomplished in Houston, and really kind of like the indelible mark that it left on Houston, because nothing since has eclipsed what they did between 78 and 80.
No. I mean, and did you follow Bud in his retirement? Was he around the game? Like, what happened after '85 with the Saints? Like, what happened after it was all said and done?
Yeah, so Bum really kind of had two loves: football, and then the other was ranching. And so he just went ranching, and he didn't look back, and he loved it. He didn't miss football. He spent some years as a color commentator doing. I guess he was probably doing Oilers games, but mostly he was out there on his tractor working, or on a horse, and so we have a lot of that, and we have a lot of players going out to visit him. His old squad, so Pastorini and Earl Campbell, and so I mentioned earlier the family atmosphere, and this is kind of how we close the movie. That's not lip service. He was a father figure to his players, many of whom didn't really have one, or a good one.
Yeah.
And it's just so obvious that those guys really, truly loved him, and they loved him until he died in 2013. I'll tell you another thing to kind of cement that. We have a great interview with Terry Bradshaw, and this is towards the end, but he's talking about what Bum means to him. Now, this is the guy who's the chief antagonist to Bum's team, right? The guy they just couldn't get over the hump with. And Terry was reverential about Bum Phillips. And he even says something along the lines of, we close it with, Bum was always, this is Terry speaking, Bum was always saying nice things about me, much nicer things than my coach ever said about me. And he goes on, but it's such an interesting thing to hear from a guy who won 4 Super Bowls with Chuck Noll. They both went to the Hall of Fame off of that.
Yeah.
And he was just clearly loved Bum Phillips. He said he always wanted to play for him, and so that's coming from the opposing team. And Bum, in his speech in New Orleans, before he talks about the cart and the mule, he thanks the players who played for him and against him. And all of that is sincere, and it's just the mark of somebody who's different than certainly coaches at the time. You said 10-gallon hats, but Tom Landry was the prototype then. Different kind of hat, wearing a suit, much more terse, less humor, less fun.
Definitely. But so the movie's out in theaters. It's in select theaters now, and then it's going to be streaming at the end of the month. So how's the movie doing overall? Have you getting any feedback on it? Or
well, my time with the movie is pretty much over, so I'd have to go and look to tell you how it's performing. But we're really hopeful about the streaming, which is it's not the end of the month. I think it starts streaming. Maybe it's the 23rd of November. It's right around Thanksgiving is when it's available.
And what streaming services is it going to be on? What
I'm not sure.
All right. Yeah.
These are things I should have been prepared for. My guess is it's going to be available on everything, likely to be Prime and Apple and wherever movies are streamed.
Yeah. Well, listen, Andrew, thank you for coming on. I mean, I can't wait to watch this movie. I mean, it's definitely an interesting story. Here we are, 40 years after he retired football, we're still talking about him. So, but any parting thoughts on just the project and, what you kind of came away from it, and when it was all said and done?
Parting thoughts. No, just that it was a real pleasure. I feel like, as a guy born in the 80s who's from Maryland, I've been in Texas now 20 years, but that this was kind of like, I didn't quite deserve this gig. And it was really cool. And as I said, jobs like this, what I like about it is I get to deep dive and learn, and I kind of love what I learned here. And I get to meet Bum's, daughters, and through the process, it's I feel like I cheated. I cheated to get the seat, but I'm happy that
you got the cheat codes. And ironically, I guess Bud Adams and Bum Phillips died the same. They both died in 2013. So whoever. So, well, listen, Andrew, I can't thank you enough. Good luck with the project. I'll be watching it. But cool. This is episode number 80 of the Sports Consiglieres podcast. I'd like to thank Andrew Miller coming on. Check out Luv Ya Bum. It's in theaters now. And also thanks to our producer, Dave Sturcio, Chop Sports Media, for putting this together. But Andrew, thank you for your time. Good luck with the project, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right. And keep in touch, brother. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know what you think.
All right. Definitely. Take care, sir.
Take care.